We came in June with African Safari Foundation, myself and Ryan, and we were here to teach the community how to make some short films. African Safari Foundation had some funding which they used to buy 2 cameras and various equipment to enable that. And the idea was that the community would make their own films for themselves, so they would tell their own story. There was 8 themes chosen. And the group was split into 2, so each subgroup then had 4 themes to go and take footage of to make the films. So we left in June after training them how to use the cameras, and they were to do some work while we were away, and then we've come back now just to help fill in the gaps, see what's been done, fill in the gaps, and complete all the footage so that Ryan can take it away and do some editing to make the short films. The first day we had to do a lot of recapping, sitting in the hall, discussing what's already been shot and what's not been shot, taking time out just to make plans as well about how the films are going to tell the stories and what stories they're going to tell. That was the first day. The second day, which was yesterday, we were out filming all day. It was quite a long day. But the groups were good. I mean, no one was trying to go home early, or in fact, they wanted just to stay and get as much done as they could. So they've been working quite hard. It's been really hot. And also there's been people that we wanted to interview. It's taken a bit of convincing sometimes as well, but I think it's going quite well. We've been getting quite a lot of what we need. So what I noticed was the first day we made plans about who the groups were going to interview. But then the next day when we started doing the interviews, it seemed that they were not interviewing who they said they were going to interview that day, and were quite often just interviewing someone else. Still someone relevant and still getting relevant information, but all that time we had spent, who you're going to interview, where you're going to interview them, it didn't necessarily work. The one group in particular went out their way to make appointments with people, but typically, as happens up here, then when they turned up for the appointment, the person wouldn't be there. So that happens for various reasons. Just sometimes people actually are really busy, because people think if you live in the Kalahari, nothing happens and you've got lots of time. But quite often what you find is people have different meetings, and it takes a long time from get one place to the other, or they might be hiking. So it's not unusual to make appointments and people don't keep them. But I think it's been okay though. People have just worked around that. You find people where you find them and when you find them, and if that can work, then that works. So you might not necessarily get who you thought you were going to get, but you might find somebody else who's also really good to interview. So that's what they've been doing, I think. People are very oral up here. When I worked in the office, that was something you noticed. Arrangements are made verbally, and people have got a lot of information in their head about what they're going to do, but they don't write it down. And that carries over to organisation generally, because it means while that person knows what they want to do, then if I would go into the office and needed to know what was happening, if that person wasn't in the office, I'd have to phone them. Whereas if it was written down in the diary or something, I'd be able to look it up. So what we experienced on the first day of the workshop was similar, I think, just that there's no routine and there's no habit. There's no culture of necessarily writing things down. So then when people have to organise what's in their head and write it on paper, it becomes difficult. But the exercise of actually writing it on paper, you realise what you've missed and what you forgot to include. So it's quite important to do that. But that was obviously quite a challenge for some people more than others. And I think it wasn't until we actually sat down and did it with them, like myself or Michaela had taken the pen and started writing it, then they actually understood how to do it and what they were missing. But I'm still not sure they could necessarily do that on their own again. I think it would take another few times perhaps of people sitting down with them to do it. I think the last trip we did, by mid-afternoon, people are tired and thinking they might want to have a sleep. But we didn't experience that at all yesterday. Even although it was really, really hot, we didn't experience that. People were happy just to keep going and ploughing on. So for me, that was quite good, because coming back, I wasn't really sure how things were going to be, because people didn't do as much work on their own as what we expected while we were away. So I was thinking maybe people are not going to be that keen. And a few people aren't here, but I think the people that aren't here, it's not actually necessarily because they don't want to be here. Some people aren't in the Kalahari, one girl's pregnant. So I think the group have actually, although they didn't do much while we were away, but I think they still seem pretty keen. So I think that's really important, and I like that. As far as my highlight of what we were doing yesterday, I liked going hanging out with the crafters while they were filming the crafters. I thought that was quite fun.